Now, before its grounding in March this year, that's 2019, the Boeing 737 MAX was arguably the fastest-selling aircraft of the decade, an aircraft that Boeing marketed as fuel-efficient and therefore economical in its 2 years of flying. But it is in its competitive nature that lawyers representing victims of the Ethiopian flight ET302 find fault. Boeing is being accused of negligence and rushing to the market, of conspiring with U.S. civil aviation regulator, the FAA, to bypass crucial reviews that led to the crash of 2 aircraft, leading to the death of 349 people in just a span of 5 months. In the second and final part of Flight ET302's special report, Sam Gituku looks at the case filed at a U.S. court representing some of Kenyan victims' families.
It was a tragic accident. That flight was full of Kenyan professionals.
The reality of the final 6 minutes of Flight ET302 on March 10th dawned on the 14th of October when fragments of flesh believed to be of the crash victims reached the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, a port they should have reached whole and alive 7 months earlier. For the 8 crew members on board, it was yet another regular flight, and no cause for worry had been suspected. Less than 5 months earlier, a similar airplane owned by the Lion Air, an Indonesian airline, had crashed into the Java Sea, killing all 189 on board. The aircraft had only flown for 800 hours, equivalent to just over 33 consecutive days. That accident was blamed on the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, abbreviated as MCAS. This is a flight control system that had been designed to alter the climbing angle of an airplane if the system perceived a stall risk. The system was necessary since the new airplane has larger engines placed further up the wings, raising the risk of a drag.
The problem with the Boeing MAX 8 is that the engines, as you can see, are very large, so they had to be mounted in a different place on the wing. That led to instability during flight tests of the Boeing MAX 8, and the aircraft started to pitch up when it was taking off. So in order to compensate for that, Boeing decided to introduce a system called the MCAS system, which changed the angle of attack of the aircraft so that the aircraft would not stall and take off.
Aviation experts have opined that the flight control system, MCAS, relied on information from just one sensor, despite there being 2 sensors on the aircraft. And so the Lion Air crash was a combination of the MCAS controversy, a faulty sensor, inadequate maintenance, poor pilot training, and a failure to hit previous problems with the same aircraft.
If they had information from both sensors feeding the MCAS system, we believe this accident could have been prevented, as well as the Lion Air crash.
A key component in the case is why, despite the Lion Air crash in Indonesia in October 2018, Boeing went ahead to deliver a new aircraft to Ethiopian Airlines without serving any warning on the safety of the same vessel. Fast forward to March 2019, Flight ET302 of the same make as the Lion Air killer flight. Same configuration, same risks that the lawyers believe caused the accident.
The big problem with the certification of the MAX 8 is that every safety system on an aircraft of this type, it's a transport category aircraft, has to have a backup safety system, so that if one system fails, the airplane will not crash. The Boeing MAX 8, in reliance on the one sensor, violated that rule. It didn't have redundancy. That's the term we use. It wasn't a redundant system. So if one sensor is failing, the plane doesn't know that. That certification on that basis is sort of unfathomable. We don't know how it got past the FAA.
The FAA should have known that the failure to have triple redundancy in critical safety systems could cause crashes and death. They recklessly left Boeing to police itself. The families demand that the 737 MAX 8 be fully recertified as a new plane because it is too different from the original certified plane.
They believe that the design and production of the new model was rushed to compete with the Airbus, which had released a similar fuel-efficient airplane to the market.
As we believe that they found that creating a new design was expensive. We believe they wanted to just comply with older safety regulations. It keeps the aircraft also less expensive because they don't have to comply with the newer safety regulations. And it also makes it easier for them to get through the FAA certification because they already did that with the 737s before them. So they can just have the FAA re-stamp those old documents.
And for the death of 149 passengers, the lawyers believe that Boeing, the company, is culpable alongside two other corporations that designed and produced the flight control systems and the warning systems. They are Rosemont, that designed and supplied the angle of attack sensors on the 737 MAX, and Rockwell Collins, that designed and supplied the flight control system, MCAS, blamed for forcing a nosedive. The connection being that the nosedive occurred after the MCAS system received wrong information from one of the sensors. Different charges have been leveled against Boeing, Rosemont, and Rockwell Collins. The Boeing company concealed information about the MCAS system to airlines and pilots and chose not to train pilots about the same system. That Boeing concealed information about the complexity of MCAS in order to boost sales without raising questions that would cause delays in going to the market. That Boeing continuously downplayed the necessity to conduct simulator training for pilots. Simulator training mimics a real flight experience for pilots, enabling them to pick different skills before actual flying. One of the marketing gimmicks, the suit claims, that Boeing marketed the new airplane on the basis that further training was not needed for pilots already flying other aircrafts in the 737 series. And in fact, most of the pilots flying the 737 MAX had only trained on an iPad, some of them an hour session behind a computer. The claimants' investigators believe that Boeing was aware of the safety deficiencies in the 737 MAX but kept mum to continue making profits for the shareholders at the expense of would-be passengers and, of course, the clients that are the airlines. The U.S. attorneys further allege that Boeing was involved in a conspiracy with the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, the body responsible for regulating all matters civil aviation, including certifying airplanes to fly in the U.S.
People came to your wedding.
The attorneys allege that FAA was under pressure from Boeing to quickly approve the 737 MAX 8 to hit the market and compete with Airbus A320neo that was enticing the market for fuel efficiency. They further allege that Boeing removed FAA officials that questioned the speed in which the 737 MAX was being designed and approved. That FAA engineers worked under an intimidating environment, ultimately the FAA delegating its regulatory role to Boeing officials themselves. The suit at an Illinois court alleges that Boeing appointed authorized representatives of the FAA instead of what previously was the norm when FAA appointed its own designated engineering representatives. The lawyers conclude that FAA aided Boeing to release a dangerous aircraft to the market.
I think the FAA did two things wrong mainly. Number one, this airplane should not have been certified for sale. It was not a safe airplane. It did not have a redundant safety system. Number two, we think the FAA should have grounded the aircraft after the Lion Air crash. So the FAA did two things wrong, certified it as safe and failed to ground it. In fact, we were the last country, the United States FAA was the last country to ground the MAX at all. The first country was China. And so the relationship between the FAA and Boeing is very important and central to our concerns and the safety process.
Boeing and their apologists want to shift scrutiny from their single-minded quest for short-term profits over safety and place it on foreign pilots who, like domestic American pilots, were left in the dark by Boeing.
Right behind me is the field where the assemblage of the 737 MAX has always happened since inception. But what you can see, the background is a green aircraft, and that is a brand new that has just been assembled, going through the final touches of production. What we are told is that the production level has been affected by about a third since that order was given to ground the 737 MAX, but in terms of flying, none has flown anywhere in the world since early this year.
While all your lives moved on, my life has not moved an inch. You've gone on with your lives, with your daily activities. I'm not able to go on with my life. I don't know how to live this life anymore.
We heal better by talking to each other. Number two, we want to prevent a third crash.
Because I trusted the FAA and I trusted Boeing. When I booked the flights for my wife and my children and my mom-in-law, I trusted that all the procedures, all the internal validation processes within Boeing and the FAA are in order. And that's what you all believe. When you're flying, when you book a flight, you do believe that.
2 crashes later and 346 dead, Boeing, that reigned as the largest commercial jets maker, has suffered both reputational and financial losses. And in December 2019, Boeing announced it would be suspending production of the 737 MAX in January until recertification of the plane. It has 400 airplanes in stock awaiting delivery that is not certain when it will come. But who is the Boeing company? Boeing is an American multinational that, among other things, is in the business of designing, manufacturing and selling airplanes. It has been in existence for 103 years, established in July 1916. It is currently the largest commercial airplanes maker, followed by its 49-year-old competitor, the Airbus, a French company. Boeing has over 165,000 employees in the United States and outside, with its annual revenue for 2018 estimated at $101 billion, equivalent to 10.2 trillion shillings. And with the 737 MAX deemed faulty for lacking appropriate sensors, warning systems, software and lacking an appropriate system to avoid a crash, the lawyers are in court seeking compensation for the victims that lost their lives and also punitive damages against Boeing.
Now the judge decides the law of the case, but the jury, 12 citizens, just plain old people off the street, decide how that law should be applied to the facts and whether or not an individual or a corporation in this instance should be held accountable for their conduct. Additionally, the jury gets to decide how much money should be paid by the wrongdoer to compensate the injured party for what they've done wrong. And in cases where there are punitive damages, it is oftentimes the jury that decides what amount of money should be paid by the corporate wrongdoer to punish them for their conduct and to deter them and others like them from engaging in similar conduct.
What this does is it prevents a company from just being able to do something bad and write a check to make it go away, because then it becomes the cost of doing business, and the cost of doing business cannot be to buy out a family after a death. In some states, punitive damages are by law directly related to how much the corporation makes. If the corporation is making $1 billion a year, then it is not a punishment to pay $10 million as punitive damages.
But what will it take?
In this case that we have against Boeing and all this defendant, all we have to prove is a little bit above 50%, just a little slightly, more probably true than not. That's the standard.
We are honored that several people from Kenya have trusted us with this lawsuit. And I use the word trust carefully because it's that type of relationship where their futures are helped and determined largely by how successful we are. And I can tell you this firm will devote every resource it has against airline manufacturers that put unsafe planes up there.
It is not yet clear how many Kenyans out of the families of 32 victims have joined the case in the US. Many are said to lack information or interest.
Some families do not feel comfortable, or they don't feel that it is ethical, or because of religion reason, they feel like they don't want to make money or ask corporations money for the death of their loved ones. But one thing they need to understand, they're not asking money on behalf of their loved ones, but this is to prevent another family from going what they went through.
Any family or any victim who opts not to file cannot therefore be able to benefit or ride on a judgment that has been given in favor of another.
Corporations don't have morals and ethics. You know, many of us, we go to church or synagogue or to a mosque, and that is where we learn our ethics or our morals. Our families teach us our morals, and that's how we make the decision, what is right and what is wrong. But a corporation doesn't have the right and wrong. The corporation is just looking at the bottom line. So we have a system in America where the jury is directly involved with determining what ethics that corporation should have followed. Those members of the jury are, like Mr. David Heiser said, they're people off the street. The people off the street, luckily, are the ones who have the morals.
What was that? It is not known how much damages would be payable to the families of victims. However, previous similar cases show it could run into billions of shillings to be administered by lawyers representing the victims' families following local laws, in the case of Kenya, the succession law.
When you hear the kind of money that probably may be paid, an average Kenyan may think is quite impossible. But it is because of the jurisdiction where this case is being handled. Allow me not to mention the amounts because of the sensitivity to the family, but it's quite a lot of money.
Justice in any form, shape or size, and preferably punitive. Because really, you cannot know that you're putting out a product that will endanger the lives of the people who have been entrusted with the responsibility to manage it and the people who are actually going to fly on it. And you actually lose a whole plane, and 5 months down the line, you're still actually going to pass this on again? No. I would hate what we are going through for any person, not even our worst enemy, to ever have to deal with something like this. It's horrifically devastating.
In July, Boeing announced a $100 million relief fund, equivalent to 10.1 billion shillings, to meet family and community needs of those affected by the two accidents of Ethiopian Airlines and Lion Air. The mode of administration of the fund not yet clear, despite a communication by an American law firm early in the year, requiring victims' families to submit their request for assistance by the 31st of December. The fund, however, is not a ground to relieve Boeing from further litigation. The Ethiopian Airlines is also expected to make a payout to affected families as compensation for loss of life aboard their vessel.
Well, the case by the victims' lawyers could be persuasive. Its success is pegged on how true those allegations are, as will be weighed by a jury that is yet to be constituted at the Illinois State. Sam Gituku, Citizen TV, in Seattle, Washington, United States of America.